All right. Thinking about leadership, innovation, and integrity? Wondering if they are the answer to our economic challenges? Pause, think about it with intentional thought, and consider where we go from here. Stay tuned and hear what His Excellency's Ambassador Leon R. Williams got to say about how the telecommunications sector goes, so goes the economy.
Something to think about with Dale Happy Knowles. What we think, we become. What we radiate, we attract. What we imagine, we surely can achieve. Let's change the narrative 242.
Welcome to Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles. Join our co-sponsors, DomDev Enterprises and Page Investments, and our friends at Something to Think as we join the discussion with this noble man this evening. One who is so digitally connected that Murphy decided to get in the way and was trying to keep him from on the show. But we know better than that, This guy goes back way in town. Welcome, sir. How are you?
I'm so good. It's good to be here, Brother Dave Knowles. It's been a long time. In fact, I saw you on Saturday. We never got a chance to talk. But we haven't spoken for a long time.
Yes. It was a busy Saturday, multiple funerals and this and that and the other. It just took forever to get in the way. But we know your resume or your bio is longer than my show has time. But suffice to say, you are double CEO of BTC, double chairman of CANTO, which is the Caribbean Association of National Telecommunications Association Organization, and then you are now the ambassador to the International Telecommunications Union, ITU. That's some big papers behind your name.
Yes, twice elected chairman of CANTO, twice elected vice chair of CANTO, once as director, once I was treasurer, and then I was CEO of BTC twice. Yes, and earlier this year in February, the government of the Bahamas appointed me to the ITU as the ambassador for the Bahamas. And as a result of that, I sit in this seat of consul representing the Bahamas and the Caribbean, the CTU, Caribbean Telecommunications Union, which is the telecommunications arm of CARICOM. That's a mouthful.
Yeah, plenty. But folks, we apologize for the late start. As we said that, Murphy tried to get in the way, that little man. I don't know where he come from, but he always tried to find the leadership. So, Williams, how do you want me to address you today? Because I have 1,000,001 names for you, and you want to be formal. We don't be formal on the show, but
Leon.
Leon, okay. Cool.
Leon.
Yeah. Yes. So we're here today to talk about Go ahead. Say it again.
Yeah, I said, I will. If you don't mind, I'll address you as Dale Happy Knowles.
There you go. However you feel fit. Once you make sure that I stay afloat, like good, Power's in the name, and whatever you tell me is my name. I have plenty power coming from you. So leadership, innovation, and integrity. 3 topics or 3 items that we know that you surely have a wealth of experience in, maybe too much. Sometimes you don't know when to stop, but we're going to guard that today. So I always say that how Telco goes, so does the economy. I always said that when I was at BTC, Telco, etc. And the more and more I look back and study the stats and everything, and align it with what we did in the company, it seems to be really much following the same pattern. Maybe not the same time because there's always a little lag, but the pattern is there. So tell us, from a sector point of view, in the global arena, how is the sector doing today? Can you hear me?
I think let's start at the top of the chart, which is internationally. say, for example, globally from the ITU
Right.
point of view. From the ITU point of view, we are still 2.89 billion people unconnected. That has
Wow.
never been on the internet.
Holy smoke.
Never been on the internet. When you go and you start to trickle that down, you go to, say, Latin America, 50% of the inhabitants of Latin America still has no internet access. And if we continue connecting people at the rate that we are connecting people, it'll take us another 50 years to get to the entire 7.4 billion people there. So that's a serious problem. In the Bahamas, we are positioned um, a little bit better than the medium. I think anybody who needs access to internet services, whether it's by mobile internet or it's wired fiber to the home or whatever the alternates are, I think they have
Right.
access to it. The question is, as you know, as an engineer, it's not just having connectivity. I suggested to someone the other day, there's 7
You froze again. Yes.
which goes extinct. So the keyboards and the softwares are all written in English.
Right.
When I go to the ITU, there are 6 languages that are accepted by the ITU. So all the documents is translated into one of 6 languages: English, French, Spanish, Chinese, Russian, one of 6 languages. So you have to think in terms that if there's 7,000 languages, giving someone a laptop and an iPad or an iPhone doesn't say that you're connecting them. The question is, how do you train them and prepare them for the use of the services that you are providing them? We've got in segment not just the young people that are disconnected,
Right.
the old people, but you've got young people who've had no access to the internet. So globally, how do we address the 2.89 billion people? Within the Bahamas and in the Caribbean, you know, as an engineer, having engineered, I don't think you were there for the TDMA. I believe you might have been there
Yeah, I was
for
there.
TDMA when we launched
Yeah, I was
cellular
there.
back in 1988. You were there.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
went from TDMA cellular services in 1988, then mobile analog to TDMA in 1999, and then we went to GSM in 2003, 2004, Nassau and Grand Bahama. And you know that every 10 years, another G is added.
Right.
So every 10 years, you change from 3G to 4G. Most of the countries now, with the exception, I suppose, of 3 major countries in the Caribbean, would be Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, and Trinidad, to a limited point, have launched the 5G.
Right.
We've been talking about 5G now for the last 3 years. If it takes 10 years for us to develop from 1G to 2G to 3G
Right.
to 4G to 5G, it means at the rate that we're going, Dale, in the Caribbean, by the time we get to launch 5G, the manufacturers would be working on 6G. And I
Right.
could tell you, I attended Barcelona, the Mobile World Congress, in February of this year, and Huawei was already testing 6G.
Right. Right.
So if we stay too long and get too far behind the curve, we might find ourselves being leapfrogged by the technology. So that's another challenge for
Yeah.
for
Leon, the question why I asked that is because I wanted to know where the world is and where we are, so we could see what the gap is. And obviously, the gap is still huge. One time ago, it was zero almost, but now
well,
it's still a huge gap. And so we've had people involved in for many years in things like I sat on a GSM North American CTO's Advisory Board, ACMA, which is the cable maintenance systems and the fraud systems. And you were on IT, you were in CANTO, a lot of us was on CANTO. We participated. So I don't know if people are participating today to know whether we understand what is the importance of keeping pace. Would you say to that?
I think we did more than
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but I can't say that. I mean, you could say that for me.
participated. See, I hate to go back to the history, but you take 1985, the CTU, Caribbean Telecommunications Union, was formed here in Nassau, Bahamas, with the Bahamas as a founding member. CANTO the Bahamas was a founding member, and Bob Bartlett, who was our general manager, was the second chairman of CANTO.
Right, right.
We sat on the governor's board at Intelsat in ITSO. We had people attending the North American
number plan
system, so that we could get the 242.
Right.
We had people participating like Leander Bethel in GATS and in the ITU from the 60s. And in fact, we joined the ITU 1 year after independence. Independence was 73. We joined the ITU in 1974. And so we had people like Andy Alcides and Barrett Russell, those sitting on study groups within the ITU.
Right.
So we were sitting at the table, not just, I suppose, accepting the technology, but we were being an integral part of it. And what BTC and Telco did then with people like you was that when we had an RFI, the request for information to design, say, cellular network, then we wrote the RFP, request for proposals. We then sent the engineers or people like you and Antonio and the rest of us went to the factories to watch how this stuff was manufactured, came back, worked along with the Cisco's or the North. And then you were people like Hilary Bethel and the rest of those who installed the sites in Bimini and in Grand Bahama and in switching the DMS 10s, DMS 100, 200, people like Bulla Archer, those doing the installations. In fact, we were the first in the Caribbean to install the DMS 100, 200. So, you know, we were involved in the technology from day one, and we were proficient in it.
Right. So is it that we're lagging now because we're not engaged in these things anymore, or what's happening? And Phil Stubbs and Phil Swan and Alvida is chiming in with notes on the screen. Yeah.
We're lagging for 1 or 2 years. Well, it's good that Phil Swan is chiming in, because Phil Swan has been responsible for selling us a lot of the equipment that we bought from Nortel when we worked at Nortel.
Right.
All the DMS switches. I don't know if you recall, we were the first to install the 5 ESS switch. And then Nortel came and forklift the switch for us.
Right.
I think we installed the ESS 5 at Soldier Road. Camperdown station. And they forklifted. When we installed the BDSNI, we were the first customer of Huawei, because Tyco International laid the cable and they subcontracted Huawei to do the electronics or the dry side of the cable. So we were always leaders.
Right, right.
And then if you look at the ITU, the ITU, 2003, 2005, the Bahamas was #1 in in digital connectivity, rated #1 in the Caribbean, number 3 in the Americas after United States and Canada. In fact, Canada was ahead of the United States. So we were always in that top tier.
Right.
Things went awry. I hate to say it, things went awry after 2011, April.
Well, before that, but anyway, but the, yeah. So, you know, we can touch on that a little bit, not really directly, but so first one is saying, let's talk about is 5G in the plan. And Phil, I can say, I heard somebody from I want to say, I believe it was Oiko saying that there are some test sites being planned. I don't know where it is in that process. That's something that I'll have to check out. I don't know, Leon, if you have any information on that.
No, I don't have any information on that. But I think we must be very careful. I think the pandemic has taught us a lot
Right.
there. We installed the BDSNI. We have had no major catastrophic failures of the BDSNI. We have lost no inter-island connectivity. We might have lost intra-island connectivity, but not inter-island connectivity. Before, when the hurricanes came, they blew down the towers. If you remember, 2001,
Yep.
we lost the 350-foot tower at.
Not Bassett.
We lost one at
Not
Bassico. We lost one at
Bassett Cove.
Foxtown,
Right.
and they were isolated. And we lost one at Highlands Key, and all of the Southeast Bahamas was disconnected during Hurricane Michelle,
Right.
because Highlands Key went into Eleuthera, then Eleuthera went to Cat Island, and down to the
Yeah.
Exuma. So everything
Yeah,
south
but
of that,
let's not
and we had to
tie
use
that
the
too
flat.
much with the technical part of it so much as where we need to go. I mean, that's what we
No, but
really trying to do and how we
I
can
was just
accomplish.
saying that we build a platform. We build a national broadband network called the BDSNI.
Yeah,
that
and this is like 20 years old almost. So I mean,
that
people, it's not
connected
nothing new, right? Okay.
that connected 14 major islands, but it
Right.
formed the backbone to allow cellular services. The 4G that we have now runs
Yeah,
on
all
that
the
submarine
digital
cable.
services. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
DSL that we have now, all the way down to Inagua, runs on that submarine cable.
So what's ITU's perspective for the Bahamas? Knowing what they know, because they know everything about us. Because the amount of reports I used to have to do to say what was happening and send, and they used to tell me go into ITU. They probably know when we go to lunch before we weren't supposed to go to lunch, right? So what is their perspective for the Bahamas? Do they communicate something like that?
Not really, but I would suggest to you that the ITU came in 2000. The Secretary General came in when IRCA hosted 2015, 2017. And if you recall back then, there was the Nassau Declaration by the ITU,
Right.
in which the ITU proposed to the government at the time that they wanted to make New Providence the first smart island in the Caribbean.
Yeah, and I want to do country. Go ahead.
That was 2017. There was an election in 2017, and the whole idea was shelved. And so we
Yeah.
squandered the opportunity.
Yeah, I
So-
wanted to do the Bahamas, because as you talk about where we sat in the scope of things, if you change the numbers a little bit, and I noticed from being on the groups like the CTO advisory group, if you change the numbers a little bit and you add things like coverage per square mile in the country and so forth, and reliability, the Bahamas is really number one in this region
It
for
is.
coverage per square square
wait,
mile,
wait,
because
wait,
those
wait,
other
wait.
countries don't have the coverage that we have, nor the capacity, etc.
Without a doubt. Dale, when you look at, we've got fiber, and I mentioned BDSNI because, as you know, on every island, you've got fiber connectivity to all the switches. For all the major cell sites on the major islands, the backhaul is fiber.
Right.
So inter-island as well as intra-island, we have got a backbone in place to provide what I would be my preference starting off would be to establish fiber to the home.
Right.
You recall when we had the Hurricane Joaquin, we ended up, as a result of Joaquin, not replacing any of the copper plant in places like Macon and Rocky.
Right.
We put
Right.
fiber in. So those customers in those islands had fiber to the home before New Providence had it. If you recall, when we had Hurricane Floyd in Abou, we decided not to replace any of the towers, and we pulled fiber all the way from Marsh Harbor all the way down to Foxtown.
Right.
And then we did the same thing to Sandy Point for BDSNI. So on
Yeah.
all major islands, we've got
So-
a backbone in place.
Right. So the difference really is leadership then. I mean, from anything else, however you want to say it. And I
you
mean,
you you
and
you you you're coming
yeah,
you're coming down that road there, because you've
yes,
got to remember two things. CANTO used to be the Caribbean Association of National Telecommunications Organizations. There are few national telecommunication organizations in the Caribbean today. In
right.
fact, I believe Belize is probably the only one where the government owns 100% of the company. The
Okay.
providers for telecommunications within the Caribbean rests on the shoulders of two companies, Liberty and
To
Digicel.
do so. To do so.
So, and I say this to make the point about leadership. When I don't know, I know Antonio might have been in the presentation. When we went to cabinet to present the BDSNI to the government, we did it first to the Hubert Ingram government.
Right.
Price Waterhouse turned us down, said we didn't know what the hell we were doing.
Yeah,
And then we
that's
went
normal.
to the Christie administration after 2002 and elections, and they basically said the same thing because it was the same, the same advices to the government. Finally, we were able to build it in 2005,
Right.
2005 and 2006. The, 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 the point I was trying to make there, there was that when we went to make the presentation to Prime Minister Christie, we only were billing the cable as far as in Exuma. If you recall, they had just launched the hotel, the Emerald
Yeah.
Bays Hotel,
Emma
$400
base.
million,
Yeah.
and 90% of the calls were failing to get off Exuma because all we
Right.
had was microwave. And then Prime Minister Christie asked us, the BTC executives in the meeting, I don't see this line going down to Inagua. If you don't put the line to Inagua, can they have GSM? The answer was no, because all we had was Tropo. Can they have DSL? The answer was no.
It's no. Right.
He said to us, build the cable. So all the all the stuff that we had done about break-even points and whether it was financial didn't come. He said, listen, I am the prime minister of the Bahamas, not of Nassau. Build the cable. And so we built the cable. And then we sold this idea to the prime minister. Look, we'll never see the return on this investment in our lifetime. Building a cable to Cat Island, Crooked Island,
Right.
Maconas, and Salvador, Rumkey, Inagua, not in our lifetime. Let us extend the cable to Port-au-Prince, Haiti. There's 10.9 million people there. We could
And
service
Cuba.
Port-au-Prince and make the money to pay for the cable in Inagua, Maconas, and Salvador.
Right. Yeah.
And then we went back and said, let us build the cable to Matanzas, the Cuba. And so we
Right.
worked a deal with the Texas and the Cuban government to build the cable. We built the cable to Haiti, and Haiti then gave us the first right of refusal for a GSM license.
Yeah.
Now, keep in
But
mind, the government changed in 2007,
yeah.
and so
Yeah.
we were not able to realize the
Yeah.
GSM license, the first right of refusal. But
Yeah.
before
So,
the government changed, um, the Honorable Fred Mitchell, who's Minister of Foreign Affairs, had encouraged BTC to go ahead and buy Teleco de Haiti. They just wanted like $91 million or something like that. And at the time, BTC had $135 million in the bank. Because the idea that Greg Bethel had as the chairman and Bradley Roberts had was that we were going to build a cable going first up to Haiti, and then we're going to build it all the way down to Trinidad. Because
right.
the ECF cable, the cable and wireless cable that came up through the Caribbean, those smaller islands, had choke points on it, and they
Right.
could
Right.
not get
Yeah.
high speed. So we
Yeah.
wanted
But
to make the Bahamas, New Providence, the center of telecommunications for the Caribbean.
yeah,
Lo
but
and behold,
actually that started from back in the 80s because that's when we bought the gateway switch.
of
That's what the
course,
purpose of the gateway switch was for.
of
Back
course,
in 87, I think that was. I ain't got memory like you. But Tyrone, wild
so
wild goose.
at that time, we were the first to leave the 809 area code. Remember, we left the
Yeah.
809 area code simply because there's like $1 million a day in fraud. And so we
Right.
end up with the 242. We were one of the first to migrate from the 809 area code.
Yeah, and
And we built a
our
gateway in
engineers were some of the
2000.
ones who encouraged that to happen in the numbering plan system. And this is why I'm saying it's leadership going to these organizations and fighting for what you want. And I hear the narrative today about we spending too much money with people traveling. Right. I don't know all the details of that. I can't defend them or not defend any of that what's going on. But I know from my experience that when we go and we sit to these meetings, and like I said, when we sit at the ACMAs and the GSMAs and stuff like that, you are actually pushing buttons to cause the industry to go in certain directions where if we're not there, it's not going to happen. And the Bahamas has been a big player in telecoms in causing the directions to go. So Tyrone Williams here, while goes here, Leon is saying, does the continued change in government, I guess he means the 5 out, 5 in, 5 out, and the different operations in governance cause the Bahamas to increase or decrease? I'm assuming it's meaning in terms of continuing the, if you could add a little bit more to that, Tyrone, would be good. But yeah.
Well, in reference to Tyrone, question to you, we negotiated in 2005-06 to build a cable to Haiti. We got the first right of refusal for a GSM license, and we wanted to buy Teleco to Haiti. And Digicel, the government changed in May 2007, and the incoming board of directors said there was no value to Haiti. There was no value. And you remember quite clearly, no value. Haiti had at the time 350,000 millionaires, people of $1 million or more living in Haiti. 350,000. The Bahamas had a population of about 320,000 at the time, because there's no middle class in Haiti. It's the poor and it's the rich. At the time, we negotiated the cable to go to Matanzas on the north coast of Cuba. Cuba had 11.9 million. So there were 23 million people. That was the market for BTC. 23 million people sitting a canoe ride away from the Bahamas. That we could have become the gateway had we built a cable to Cuba, had we taken the GSM license. And I say this to you, Damon Blackburn, who later became the CEO of Digicel, of Alive, as the CEO of Digicel, went into Haiti and built the GSM network that we were supposed to do. And he collected in terms of revenue over 700 million. Haiti became the largest #1 earner for Digicel. 700 million. That's twice the total revenue. And this is just on prepaid. Twice the total revenue of. So when you talk about leadership and innovation, this is squandered opportunities, man.
Yeah. So Leon, before we get to Phil's question here on the screen, though, I say leadership, and because I always look at leadership as being that how we help people understand how they could achieve things that they weren't inspired to achieve on their own because they couldn't figure out how to do it by themselves, right?
Right.
You're carrying people to new levels and new heights. And so you have people like the Robert I. Bartlett you call already, Barrett Russell, Leander Bethel, Hilary Bethel, Lawson Ferguson, Debbie Jackson, D.G. Donaldson, etc., Keith Archerson, and some of the other ones. But you also had this giant of a man, might not have been technically, so technically inclined, but the late Honorable, most esteemed Nesbitt Alfonso Higgins, BMJP, who in his own way found a way to energize BTC or Batelco at the time and cause things to happen and cause the people who had the movers and shakers, who had the pen of the engineer like myself or yourselves, to make things happen, right? And when there was obstacles, he was one who would be there fighting for you. to knock down, at least for me, he did. I don't know about you. I know he give you a heavy tool bag, but he also would lift you with a big hammer, right? And I think it's people like him that maybe to answer a question I saw earlier, I said, what was the difference? Maybe it's because people like him are not in the system anymore. Or at least we don't hear about them. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
Let's say this. On Saturday, I was asked to give a tribute to Nesbitt. Nesbitt was my first boss. When I joined BTC, I was 16 years old, didn't have driver's license, 6 months out of high school. Nesbitt was my first boss. I used to walk to work, me, Steve, Turnquest, and the rest of us. And then in the evening time, we would walk from there out to Oaksfield to go to technical college. Nesbitt was my first boss, taught me what I needed to do to operate in sub apparatus. And so you had out there, you had to wake at 7:30 in the morning, at least 7:15, 7:30. We didn't start until 8 o'clock. You went to the Paul track to pick up the vehicles. Back then, senior technicians didn't carry tool bags. Senior technicians didn't drive. You either drive as a trainer, you sit on the back of the truck, but you was gonna sit inside the truck. And if you remember fellas like Lawson Ferguson, you go to Soldier Road, you could eat off the floor. The first thing, and he had nobody, no janitor. You clean the floor yourself as technicians and stuff like that. So those were the kind of disciplines that we had. And I made this point because just before I spoke, Honorable Tommy Turnquest spoke, and right after, I was sandwiched between him and the leader of the opposition, Michael Pintar. And so Nesbitt called me and said, listen, boy, I almost crossed Jordan. And then I called Nathan and Raul, Nathan out, as I stated. But 6 months after I joined BTC, I didn't know it at the time because I was only 16 years old. But back in 1966, when the government of the Bahamas created from telecoms and created Betelco, the Bahamas Telecommunications Corporation, trading as Betelco in the 1966 Telecommunications Act, the government stated at that point in time that, listen, Bahamians are not qualified to run a telephone company.
Right.
And so they went out and they hired Page Communications. Page came in with all their engineers and with all the executives. In fact, I was shipped to Freeport and I became the second Bahamian technician working in Grand Bahama. Julian Allen was the first. They were all expats there. But before I went to Grand Bahama, Nesbitt said, listen to the technician, listen, we're going to meet at JFK. Well, not JFK, Thompson Boulevard.
Thompson Boulevard.
Yeah. Right there opposite Government High, the old Government High, college.
The COB
University of Bahamas,
library, bookstore.
And we start marching around. This was led by Nesbitt Higgins because there was no BCPOU, BCPMU. These guys were part of the Bahamas Public Services Union or something like that.
Yeah.
Back then, I didn't know what it was.
They make the movers and shakers, yeah.
But so he hung a sign on me, Dale, and the sign read, I would never forget this. In fact, I took the sign home. The sign read, Mr. Wright is wrong.
Yeah.
Mr. Wayne Wright was the general manager of Page Communications, Betelco. The march around had a meeting with Arthur Folks, he was the minister of telecoms at the time, and with the premier at the time, because this is before independence. That tells you how politically activists that Nesbitt weren't doing what they did. And so they met with them, and the minister, Sir Arthur Folks now, tore up the management agreement, the 3-year management agreement, tore it up and appointed the first all Bahamian executive team with Ari Knowles as the first Bahamian general manager, Bob Bartlett, Aubrey Curlin, you go to Aaron Leash, TV Arties, you go down to Edmund Granger. I mean, you know them all. So the first, it was people like Nesbitt Higgins who provoked that took that kind of action. And back then, when they say to you, the senior technician say to you, jump, you used to
Mm-hmm.
ask, your only question was how high. Because fellas like Lester Gardner, call his name.
Yeah.
I used to
Stick.
be so scared of Lester damn would slap you so hard the taste will come out of your mouth.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So Leon, we get before we ask, Phil is asking the question about the policy, but before you go back there, Madam Producer, put that back there. This gentleman on the screen with the question, Phillips, Alfred Phillips. We cannot
Alfred
highlight
Phillips,
the contribution that
your
he has
old
made
boss.
in building people in that company, building leaders and building networks, contributed in technical and the business side, etc. Alfred, I tip my hat to you. I ain't gonna hear the tip, but I tip my hat to you. Yeah.
No, Alfred, these were engineers. Kelsey Jennings, Barrett Russell, and the Bachelor, Alfred. These were engineers that I always wanted to be like, emulate them, you know. But Telco had a training school by the, opposite where the Guardian is, that building
Right.
there. It's now a church.
Yeah.
That was Batelco. That's where they send you to train. And then when they built the Point Siena, they had the training classes there. But you had Kelsey Jennings and Barrett Russell,
Yeah.
all in the classroom.
Yeah.
You must recall back then we did the City and Guilds. Back then,
Yeah.
DJ Nottage had
But I know
put
you
together-
always fuss me for coming in with an engineering degree, and people will start rocking you and say you think he was more important than everybody else. So Phil is saying here, Leon, has the this administration updated the telecommunications sector policy? Has there been any changes to it?
The sector policy is in the process, ERC is in the process of trying to update the sector policy. As you know, the sector policy is mandated by law. The Attorney General must publish the sector policy every 3 years. And by law, if the Attorney General does not proclamate the sector policy, then it behooves ERCA to go ahead and produce a sector policy. There was some delay on the sector policy. But when the new administration came in 2021, they came in with this My Plan, talking about digitization and digitalization, talking about the orange economy and the blue economy,
Right.
talking about digitization 700 for the Bahamas. The sector policy must reflect
Right.
that set of new initiatives by the government.
Right.
Because in our plan, as it states, it is only a vision, and a mission.
Right.
But you've got to give legs to that. So the sector policy would articulate that. But again, on the other side of that, there has to be some kind of development process there, because by itself it will not happen. For example, and you know this, we need a real solid tier 3, tier 4 data center in the Bahamas.
Right.
Because of
Right.
the, we need an IXP in the Bahamas. You cannot continue to send emails. You're sitting by next to someone who is on the BTC network and someone who's on the Kale Bahamas network, and that email has to go all the way out to Florida and come back to you sitting right next to that same person.
Yeah.
You need an IXP within the Bahamas. And
All right, so Leo, I don't want to eat up all of the time on leadership, but Phil is also asking here, is there a plan to deploy cloud platforms in the Bahamas, which you was just touching on just now, and which drastically reduces operational costs for the IT services, etc. Yes, that is so. So you've been watching some...
There's some talk, other people talk about using a cloud or a Caribbean cloud. I think, again, Dad, we must work through step. You are an engineer. And
listen, the Honorable Loftus Roker said it best on this show. And he said, leaders must lead. Right?
Yeah.
And at some point in time, the leaders in the sector need to stand up and lead, because you can't ask the people who get elected every 5 years who don't know nothing about the industry to lead them.
Right.
Or to rely solely on a regulator. Regulator has its value, but that's only one perspective. So leaders must lead.
And
right?
I take the Honorable Loftus Roker's position, because he was the one that gave us JFK, the building, and moved us from the city to a building that we own, right?
Yeah.
So, and he, as the Minister of Telecommunications, responsible for BTC. But going back to what I was saying about
Leon, I said that after the break, we got to pay these people, right? Yeah. So you've been watching something to think about with Dale Happy Knowles, and we're here with the His Excellency, the Ambassador. He don't want me call him all of that. Leon Williams, my old boss, CEO. We gave him permission to come to Nassau from Grand Bahama, and do his contribution. We'll be right back.
Sammy's Chicken. There's nothing like it.
When you're looking for clothing, you can shop from store to store. But when you need gowns and tuxedos for weddings, proms, or any black tie event, there's only one name to remember. Buttons Bridal and Formal Wear since 1986. Enjoy gowns and tuxedos for any budget. We'll see you at Buttons Showroom in Cable Beach, Nassau, or visit buttonsformalwear.com. Nobody does formal wear like Buttons.
Scoop, lick, and savor is a smile and memory being made or reminisce. Whether you're at work, out with family on a Sunday, or have friends visiting, flavor will meet expectations in our 32-ounce container for only $10 if you're having a special event as well. Exotic flavors ranging from soursop to Guinness is definitely worthwhile.
Welcome back to Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles, and we're here this evening talking with His Excellency Leon R. Williams about how the telecommunications sector goes, so goes our economy here in the 242, the Bahama land. And so I have a good friend and mentor who I think I know well just through studies, but his name is Peter F. Drucker, and he says the purpose of business is to create and keep a customer. The business enterprise has two and only two basic functions: marketing and innovation. Marketing and innovation produce results. All the rest are cost. Marketing is the distinguishing, unique function of business. Now, Leon, we know you're the marketing king of BTC forever, right? Because you took the company from wherever we was at the time. I think we went all the way up to a peak of about $360 million in revenue. And so whilst we go through these things on innovation and so forth, we want to also look at the screen to get some of these questions that persons to ask them, because, you know, we want to try and help them out too.
Okay.
But why is it necessary to have constant innovation? What is so important about that?
Number one, Dale, in telecommunications, a revenue stream, once a revenue stream peaks, it'll plateau for 3 years, and after that, it's like the bar-top diagram, it's inverted bar-top. It starts going down. So you constantly have to develop revenue streams. And as you know, we created the GSM. and before GSM, we had the TDMA technology, and then we added to the TDMA prepaid cellular services. And then we got GSM, and then we added MPLS. This was after
Right.
things like text messaging. And then we added the Vibe. Remember when we were getting hit by Magic Jack and the rest of those kind of things? And they actually made a law in the Bahamas that was illegal. We went ahead and said, well, forget that. We're going to get someone to host our Vibe for us until we digitize our network and we could host it ourselves. That was your job. And so every time we saw a revenue, and let me say this before I go any further, so I could give the staff kudos, because people see Leon will. I learned from Sir Albert Miller as chairman of BTC, as chairman of Telco. He said to me, Leon, the first thing a good leader must do is he must create a team. You are a ruby, but the ruby shines its brightest when it is surrounded by diamonds. Everybody sitting around that boardroom, including you and Antonio and the rest of Tellus and Phillips and the rest of were far smarter than I was. I was just a window dressing. My job was to sit down, to listen to you guys, to tell me, and then go ahead and whether I need to go to the minister, I need to go to the prime minister, go and make the things, get the things done that you all couldn't do. But you all in the background designed all the Vibe and the prepaid cellular. It's all the technicians and engineers that did. It wasn't me. So once I had an idea as a leader, and I passed it off to you as the VP, you were VP of engineering, I think, when we did some of this stuff, and took over the CTIO, you all created. And then we brought the marketing team in. How best can we do it? I remember people saying to us that there was no competition, and we were spending money like it was going out of style. Well, we were preparing for competition. I remember a new chairman coming into BTC, and we had paid for all the executives to attend Duke University and Wharton and these schools for Harvard for executive training. And the guy said, but he's got a bachelor's degree. They didn't understand the difference between education and training. And they didn't realize
leaders are readers.
Cross-pollinization you got when you sat in these classes with other VPs from other companies. And so I just wanted to clear that up so that people don't get the idea that Leon was the man you're working by himself. No, there was a whole team sitting down that was far smarter than I was.
You were the face, man. You were that big marketing king and so forth. But you know, one of the key people to all of this happening, who was not on the technical side of the fence, is right there on the screen right now, Mr. Brian Jacks. This man never slept. He was only one person in Bataco, I think, slept less than him, and that was you, right? But
no, I just said Brian Jack up just yesterday to say hi to him and stuff. Brian Jacks had 2 cell phones, and sometimes he was talking to 2 of them at the same time. He was responsible for the plumbing, for the mechanics. I mean, the toilet stopped running, the water stopped running, the generator didn't start, the lights went out. It was all Brian Jacks.
Yeah, so Leon.
In New Providence, I first met Brian, and he was my assistant manager in Grand Bahama before he came to Nassau in 1999.
Yeah, so Leon, Brian is talking about he's in the AI technology now, which is right in the front now. That's AI is in the front of the whole technology revolution. So, is AI being included in that policy sector change?
I don't see it being included in that change because I look at the digitization, and you see there's a difference between digitization and digitalization, right? I look at what the government is articulating.
And digital transformation. There's 3 of them.
And, right. And so the ITU is trying to work through these various issues right now there. One of the biggest problems with the ITU for the Caribbean is when you were there, it was mandated that we report. We are not reporting all the information that we used to the ITU. So sometimes when you go there and you look for data on the Caribbean or on the Bahamas, you see /A not available. You understand
Yeah,
what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
and and
yeah.
and and as you know, as an engineer, if someone wants to know how to get to some place, the first thing you do is know where they are. You
Right,
reverse engineer to where they want to be, and then you give them a glide path how to get
right,
there. That's how
right.
you and I, as engineers, that's how
Yeah,
we
yeah.
think.
You
You know,
need the numbers. You
and
can't do nothing without the numbers. Yeah,
and I'm
yeah.
going back to I'm going back to you. You quoted Drucker a while ago and stuff. I've said to people over and over and over and over again, the best way to forecast the future is to create it.
Create it. Yep.
You know? And so we were sitting at BTC when Alive came in and the competitor came in the mobile sector. We always had competition and landline from Cable Bahamas and internet. In fact, we got into the internet business after Cable Bahamas. I don't know if you recall when
The
Minister Bruce
SRG, man.
Gold
Yeah.
was a sponsor. He did not want BTC to get into the internet, if you remember.
Leon, you don't get fired twice now. Don't get fired again now. Okay.
Oh
So,
no, no. but it is what it is. History, people try to rewrite history. It is what it is. You
right. That's
understand what
true.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so we
Yeah.
we 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 were issuing ISPs because BTC, remember, but Telco was also the regulator at the time
Yeah.
before the
Right.
PUC. So we
Right.
issued licenses. Um, and and,
Yeah.
and 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 so BTC always was in a competitive since a license was issued to Cable Bahamas. The only thing that we were not competing in was the cell phone business. And someone will say, well, that was the biggest part of the pie. But that only came after 2004. But all before that, BTC was keeping the Bahamas on the cutting edge of technology by itself.
Yeah. So, Leon, Tyron Walgo says, will the present government demonstrate the vision needed to move the Bahamas forward from what we have seen in the past? I guess that's a loaded question.
That's a very loaded question. I think you've got the platform, which is our plan. As you know, as an engineer, looking at that and reading that sounds fantastic, sounds great. The question are two things: how do you implement it, and how do you pay for it?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
So, go ahead.
the government of the Bahamas does not own any telecommunications infrastructure. So you can't mandate somebody to do, but the government of the Bahamas does own shares in Alive. It does own shares in Cable Bahamas, and it does own 51% of the shares of BTC.
Yeah.
It comes back to a question of leadership.
Right. Cool. And that innovation that
And
continue
what we
going
need to do,
forward. Yeah.
get the technocrats. Dave, you weren't there, but we built
Leon,
a
you need
three-page.
think tanks. You need to get all of the institutional knowledge that is out there and put them in rooms, pay them a couple dollars, and let them envision the networks and then the environment and come up with what is expected in order to be. I always talk about this $100 billion economy, and people look at me like I'm crazy, but that is not far off if we put the right
No,
heads together to build it, right?
no,
And so forth. So
I
Alfred
agree.
Phillips is saying here that do you see any possibilities of a government coming to an agreement where BTC can be controlled by Bahamians through selling the government shares to the private sector and negotiating Bahamian control?
My first firing was on my total disagreement with the government privatization. My recommendation to the cabinet of the Bahamas at the time was that we take out an IPO and sell the shares to Bahamians and make sure that you
Right.
put in a clause, we trade on BISX, make sure that you limit it to the amount of shares that could be bought. You
Right.
set aside an ESOP for the employees and you give 2 or 3% to the employees. That was my first, that is what I pushed over and over and over again. I got a comment from a very senior person who wrote to me and said, listen, don't get in this idea of the government taking back BTC or buying BTC. And that's ludicrous because the government can't afford to maintain it and all that kind of. So you're going back and forth with the.
Yeah,
It's
but all,
to me
all
more
that is
philosophical
colonial
based.
mindset, Leon. We can't worry about people who think in that way, right? Attrition is going to take care of them, right?
Right. So,
Because I
so I
mean,
mean, these are people. These are people outside of BTC. These are business people. The same people who champion the idea of selling BTC, in which the government realized a loss of
yeah,
150 plus million. So, what I think we need to do, just not write what the vision is that you want, which is articulated in a plan, the plan for
right,
change.
right,
But there's some things that you got to embed. Estonia is where it is because Estonia embedded in its constitution that
right,
every citizen, it is a human right for the internet.
right,
I mean, it's a part of their constitution. And then they wrote out that they're gonna create two identities for the person. You've got your physical identity and you've got your digital identity. We're talking about ID cards. The digital identity, if anyone access your digital identity in Estonia, you
right.
get notification of who and why they went
Bye.
into your account. It's the same thing at BTC. Anybody that goes into a customer account, there's a time and date stamp that allows management to know who was in looking at somebody's
Right,
account, right? If a customer complained. So the
right.
government has to put some rules and regulations in to govern the technology. The longer we wait to put those rules in, the technology changes, Dale. And what happens
Yeah,
is legislation always lags the technology.
yeah. But that's
So
because
we are
of
fighting
leadership.
from the rear, trying to
We
catch
got to
up.
get in front. So
We have got
when
to
we look
get
at
in
that,
front.
right.
But that comes from your vision.
Yeah, but it comes from one, and it comes from integrity too, right? And so you talk
Yeah.
about these people who say not to do these things anymore. They're more concerned from what you were saying. It seemed to me was on the bottom line at the time, and collecting that dollar, and not necessarily what is best for the country for the long run.
What
It's
I
everything is for
100%
like
agree.
what is happening now, right?
I 100% agree with you, Dale. 100%
Yeah. So
agree with you. And so a
Phil
lot of
Swan,
people are doing it for selfish reasons.
yeah, Phil Swan says here that Leon only recognized my country. Oh, Leon only recognized my country at Nortel AM. I also bought him 4G to as Ericsson AM, and no new technology has been developed since I left Ericsson in 2017. We don't have to say no more about that. That's leadership again.
Now,
But integrity, though, Leon.
Phil sold us more equipment than anybody else. Phil brought
Yeah.
us Atlantis. He brought us the PBX, the largest PBX in the Caribbean. Then he brought us the second largest at Crystal Palace. So there was no competitor for Phil. And
Yeah,
then
but the mentality, Leon,
huh?
the mentality is what it is that we needs to change, and that's why we have on the show. And I say, let's change the narrative. If we change the narrative, we can change the attitude,
Okay.
right? And we need to
Totally
talk
agree.
about these things that is could cause things to change. So I'll be just saying, any idea as to whom is advising the current BTC leadership and customer interaction in subpar, to say it nicely.
Tell Alvita to behave herself, man. She like me.
Yeah.
she rude like me, and you. Alvita was always like that, right?
The BTC has a board to advise them and direct them as to how they want to go. You know, you know how to go, right?
Dave, let me say what I've said to BTC, to the leaders of BTC at the highest level. And I say the highest level, I mean in Denver, Colorado, Balinia. I've simply said, listen, I really don't care how good your strategy is. Culture will eat your strategy every morning for breakfast, for lunch, and for supper. You cannot take something that worked in Barbados and Trinidad, import it, cut and paste in the Bahamas, and expect it to work. Not being braggadocious, not being finicky. Bahamians are completely different.
Yeah, it's a
Bahamians,
unique environment.
the Bahamas market has the highest penetration of smartphones in the Caribbean. Bahamians don't buy cheap phones. They buy their iPhone and their Samsungs. You got to understand it. When we had prepaid came, we had $100 cards, $50 card, $20 card. And I don't know if you remember, the guys on the street were selling $20 cards, 320s for 50.
Yep.
Okay. The $100 cards didn't move. Then we introduced the $5 cards. Bahamians would go and buy a $5 card, and I'm not being facetious. Buy a $5 card on Monday, a $5 card on Wednesday, a $5 card. It is our culture. Bahamians would go to a gas station and say, man, top me up 10.
Right.
Some of them, their car ain't never been on full.
Right.
So you have to understand.
Still today.
You have to understand, number one, you have to understand the institutional culture at BTC and the institutional culture of the country.
Right.
When we introduced prepaid, we were paying commissions of $30, 30%, commission. We were paying out $23 million to Bahamians on the streets selling prepaid phone cards. Within a month after privatization, those people disappeared off the streets.
Yeah.
The commission was gone. It was sucked up. It went back to the coffers. And I remember Bradley Roberts saying to me when the banks wanted to get it, he says, no, this is for the small man on the street.
Right.
The guy who's going to stand on the street corner. Nobody ever had a difficulty trying to top up because we understood the culture. And it's difficult sometimes for people who don't live here, been here, to understand that culture.
Yeah, but you had
exactly what happened.
Yeah. Before you go to that though, you had an executive who's brought in a company to show the engineers how this thing work, and the company. I need to say no more, but you know what happened to the network when we fired that up, right? So we need to have integrity and identity for ourselves, and to be able to do. And I always say integrity is about doing the things in the dark what we profess to do in the light. And so Tyrone is saying here again that what's you go grade BTC in terms of leadership integrity. Wow. How would you do that? Yeah.
So you try to save my job right there.
Yeah. I can have you answer that. As your lawyer without going to law school, you can answer that question right now. So Phil, I says, whatever happened to data protection law? Phil, I sat on the original committees, and then in time, I think it was Leon said it was too many things for me to do, so I needed to come off of that and do something else, more focus on what to do. But
you're a VP of engineering. You had an engineering network to build.
Yeah, but what I remember to be the case is because we had many rows about this around the boardroom table, and well, not board meeting, but executive meeting table. And what was put to me was that as long as the persons in the other countries don't have access to see the personalization of the data can be stored elsewhere. Now, I don't know if that's being practiced or not. That's something beyond what I have access to. Leon, you want to comment on that?
Well, I think once we went down that road, and then you know, people will find a reason to justify. Once we went down the road of outsourcing, when you have someone from another country calling you to tell you your phone bill need to be paid,
right?
They've got access to all your data. Okay. Once you start storing that data, so you got your credit collections, you got your knock outside the country, you got all these things outside the country.
Yeah.
If you take and you put NIB outside the country, then you really got a serious problem. And then if you want to want to start talking about national ID, but it's outside the country, stored in a cloud somewhere in the Caribbean, you've got a problem, sir. So I agree with Phil from this point of view. We need, and this is what I was saying, Dave, as an engineer, you know, you got to dot all the I's and cross all the T's.
Yep.
You got to alpha test that network. And then after you alpha test it, you then beta test it. You give it to customers, preferred customers, to try it before you go ahead and do a launch. And so a lot of these things that we're thinking about, we're just going to the big bang, you know. Let's do this. If it fail, it fail. We're not thinking about cybersecurity. Because, as you know, cybersecurity is like insurance. People only need it when it happens, and if they get away without doing it, we spend big money on people coming in and interviewing on network, doing diagnostics on that network from outside and from behind the firewalls, just to make sure. So BTC never crashed because of a virus. BTC never crashed because it was hacked, because we spent money on doing it. We saw that as insurance. And the engineers, when you guys designed the network, you designed the network with cybersecurity in mind.
Yeah.
Protection in mind. It was never an afterthought. People are throwing networks together and cybersecurity becomes an afterthought. And then you see they get hacked. And the information, the personal data for people and the customers get out to the public, sold on the black market.
Yeah, I used to have Cisco come in every year, and they used to run I forget what it's called, the test, but they would basically try to find out all of the holes and intrusion tests, right, and so forth. And so, I mean, I remember sitting and trying to get approval for the project, and some of the things that people tell me around the table. But Leon, you know, those days gone a lot. What we need to do to go forward? What? I think that's the main question most of the people are asking out there. What needs to be done in order for the sector to be maximized and to cause our economy to move forward? Because we already have where our economy really is following what is happening in the telecom sector. So we need the telecom sector to jump up. What needs to happen?
Well, you know, we said ICT Telecommunications
all that
holds it all together. You've got a problem, Dale. The question is whether the entities can make the investments. We are in a hurricane belt, where hurricanes come through like Dorian. And if we don't reinforce and harden the network, we end up spending plenty of money. You know, as an engineer, that every time a hurricane passes through, we use that opportunity to refresh the network. And whatever we needed to do there, we did it. You know, we make sure we harden that. We never put old cables back up. We put new cables up. We put fiber in and all that sort of thing. Hurricane Dorian put a blow on us in Grand Bahama and in Abou. I don't know whether we hardened the network. We just need the leaders, I suppose, people like you and I and Phil Swan and the rest of them, and Nathan Nesbitt, Nathan Tinkin, who's on. We just need to be able to put our foot down, to hold our leaders accountable so that they would do what needs to be done. Dale, if we had gone to Safe City, Smart City back in 2017, we would not have gotten to the point that we did when the COVID-19 came. You know, and I know we were putting internet services in every school. We wanted to connect every clinic with fiber. We wanted to connect every school with fiber. We didn't. They decided that, no, we're going to leave that for the other people to do when we sell the company. Well, the company has been sold. How much investments has been made since then?
We've gone from 2,300 employees down to what, a couple hundred?
Yeah. and so, and you know, and I know that the customer services is directly proportional to the employees that you got. And, you know, I always have a mathematical formula for these things, but I wouldn't bore you with that. But
No, the big one, Leon, is how you treat your customer. How you want to treat your best customer. If you treat your employee that way, they will treat your customers that same way.
well,
That's
that's the big elephant in the room. You cannot expect the customers to be treated well if you say that your employees are your number one asset and you treat
right,
them badly.
right.
And they don't know today or tomorrow whether they got a job or they're on visa.
Yeah. So the government
How do they
needs
think
to
and how do
really
they
need
function?
to the government really needs to revisit not just the sector policy, but how it participates in terms of its ownership and what vehicles or engines
Well,
it needs to have in
that's
those
the real
bodies in
big
order to
elephant
cause
in the
things to
room.
happen.
That's the other big elephant in the room, because I have said to some policymakers, listen, I love the plan. I love this digitization, 700 islands and all these other. I love it. I love it. But how do you execute it? Are you really politically intentional about doing it? Or you just hope that it will happen by itself? It will not happen by
By
itself.
itself, right.
It needs intentionality. Like you say, put some technocrats in the room who understand the technology, because the longer you wait, the worse is going to happen. It is not if another pandemic is going to happen.
Blackout. Cool. Ken Clark is saying treating customers well is a non-starter in the Bahamas. Leon, you don't have no sound. You mute. Let's unmute you. Let's see if we get you unmuted. No, Leon, you have to unmute Leon. Leon, can you hear me? I can't unmute him. Send him a text. We ain't gonna see that. No. Okay, he froze. Yeah. Cool. All right, so we've been having this nice, juicy conversation here with Leon, and he's back now. So, can we hear you? You can unmute. You were muted. I don't know. You had a power glitch.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was saying, Dave, it is not if a pandemic would happen. It is when the next pandemic is going to come. Connect.
Right.
I love the idea of 5G. Connect. I prefer fiber to the home. Number one, because for 5G, any cell site that you put must be connected by fiber. Take the
Right.
strands past the homes, connect every school, connect every clinic, take every clinic all the way back to the hospital, Princess Margaret Hospital, so that they could look at vital signs during an emergency. Just last week,
It's a lot. It's a lot.
last week, we were bragging about Air Canada going into San Salvador, May Gorno. We talk about these long European flights going down there. I don't know if you remember the Flamingo. When
Vaguely.
the missiles, the mix came over and shut them out of the water. Because of the lack of telecommunications in the Southeast Islands, Nassau didn't know about it for hours.
Right.
BTC Telecommunications is a national existential threat to the Bahamas. You can't curb illegal migration. You can't curb the drug trade. You can't curb the gun trade. You can't curb crime without, you go to Singapore, leave a laptop out on this open,
Yeah.
because they got CC cameras all over the place. It's a smart city. We don't have the resources in terms of vehicles, in terms of money to be able to spend. You've got to use technology.
Yeah. But that is true. But you gotta be intentional about these whole things, and that's what the show is all about. Is helping people to think intentionally. So, Ken, you are 100% right when you say that about the people, and that's why I said here that leadership is the key, because leadership is about the people and how we treating the people. You said it, Alvita said it, everybody says it. Leon can tell you that we preached this left, right, and center when we went to the $360 million mark and so forth. That how you treat people. People, Iacocley says, businesses, become down to people, product, and price, and people come first. So, when we decide we want to move this country forward, we have to deal with the telecommunications or the electronic communications sector as defined by ICT. How they define it. So, Leon, what do you want to leave with everybody before we go? Because I know we will have to be talking to next week. Yeah.
I'll say two things, David, before you leave. I don't know if you remember, we used to do town hall meetings on every island in the province.
Voice of
You
the
used to
customer.
have your engineers in the back. We made a contract with the customer. If we can't repair your phone within 48 hours, your service is free. Remember that?
Yeah.
And engineers used to be lying off in the back there when they put their hands up to ask me a question about their phone ain't work for 24 for a month. The engineers right in the back there interrogating the system. And I don't know if you remember, but I want to say this for the country. When Bradley Roberts was minister, Bradley Roberts signed a union agreement in which he offered profit sharing to the employees, the unions. The administration came later on and canceled the profit sharing. Say profit sharing is paid to shareholders,
Right.
not to the employees. So, my thing is, it is not that we don't know what to do. We know what to do, Dave.
Yeah.
We've done this. We've seen this video before. The question is, will our leaders be intentional? Will they listen? And what is their main goal? What is it that they want to achieve? Not in words, but in action. What is it that they want to achieve?
Awesome. Well, Leon, we'd like to really thank you for taking the time out. I know you had your glasses today because on Saturday you didn't have your glasses, and you had to talk off your foot. But we thank you for taking us down this road so we could talk a little bit about leadership, innovation, and integrity in the sector. And it seems like we have the potential to have a very bright future. It just takes some intentional thought and direction in order to make it happen. So
I'll leave one thought that I've been working with the CTU, Dale, and with the ITU. I basically put smart city, safe city back on the drawing board for the Bahamas. That came in 2017, and we squandered that opportunity. In Kigali, in Rwanda, Africa, the development where the present deputy director is Stephen Baru. They raised $26.4 billion in pledges. I want to see if I could align the Bahamas to tap into that. One of our biggest problems for the Bahamas is that when we go to these international forums, the Bahamas, because its per capita income is not considered, in a lot of cases, a developing country. Right. We are a developed country. So Africa beats us to the deal. And then we go, they all dress up. And so we don't look. And so we mix our messages. We get schizophrenic with our message. Because in the midst of trying to get assistance, we go and say in our speeches that the Bahamas is the best little country in the world. And then we do the tagline, it is better in the Bahamas. So how do you use that tagline when you come into ask for help? You understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
So the
No, I agree 100%. Yeah.
The message is very confusing, even at the ITU. And so I'm trying to see how I could work with the CTU, Rodney Taylor, the Secretary General, so that we could
Okay.
advance the position of the Caribbean. And secondly, to go ahead. Africa got 54 countries, 54 votes. The Caribbean got 14 votes. We got 40 million people in the Caribbean, and they outvoted us. We went
Right.
to round two. First round, Stephen Baruch for director. We got about 67 votes. We had reciprocal agreements signed with 70 plus countries. So obviously, everybody who agreed didn't vote for us. Then we went to round two. In round three, the Africans pulled their two candidates, left one, they had three candidates, and Pakistan gave their votes to Africa. So in round three, they beat us. But there's a tale of two cities. For the consul seat, and I sit on consul represent CARICOM, out of 180 votes, Argentina got 172, Mexico and Paraguay got 169, the Bahamas got 167. So we got the fourth highest vote at the ITU for the consul position. We beat the United States and we beat Canada and the amount of votes collected. So we've got a brand. The question on the international market, the question is, what are we going to do about it?
Right. Yeah. Well, that's the challenge, and maybe we'll have a show where we just answer that question.
Yeah.
Go for that.
I think so.
Yeah.
And
So thank you.
we also have to answer the question: how do we portray ourselves internationally if we want international help?
Oh boy, yeah. Yeah, Leon, that's another hour.
Because we don't
right?
beg.
Yeah.
We don't want to beg for nothing, right?
Right.
But the
yeah,
African
yep.
countries, they go there, man, listen.
Yeah, we beg for some things, but it ain't gonna be that. So anyway, so thank you kindly again, Leon.
Thank you, my friend, for
His
having me.
Excellency Ambassador of the Bahamas to the ITU. Boy, some big shots, Yeah.
And on consul, I represent the Bahamas and CARICOM.
And CARICOM, yes.
The English-speaking Caribbean, because there's only one seat for the Caribbean.
Yes. All right. And thank you all who participated today. It's very refreshing to have the interaction and the drill of the questions. It keeps us on our P's and Q's and so forth. And next week we'll come back with another topic that hopefully will expand our minds and cause us to do great things. Enjoy. Be safe. Madam Producer, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Enjoyed the show? Then subscribe to us for more educational and inspirational content. Ring the bell so you never miss a show. Let's change the narrative 242